So I'm just waiting for that engine to cool down enough so I can put the tarp over it without the exhaust manifold melting it. And while I was waiting, I decided to take these arms off because I'm going to start looking to see if I can source an aftermarket cheap replacement for these ball joints that are completely shot. This one actually doesn't seem too bad. The rubber cup is ripped to heck, but it's actually still pretty good as far as loose. This one is completely shot and bent. Of course, the fact that these arms are the way they are and these pieces of angle iron welded onto them to reinforce them, that just gives you an idea how bad they must have been beating on this thing. This one, I loosened the nut and it's not coming out, so I got to grab a pickle fork, pop it in there. So this is sometimes referred to as a pickle fork, but it's a tie rod end and ball joint separating tool. Just basically a fork with a wedge to it. And it's supposed to create enough wedging action to get this taper in here to pop free. There it is. And again, in case there was any doubt, that is completely trashed. So interestingly enough, the holes on this end are smaller than the holes on the pitman arms that go on the steering box. So the two ball joints at the front ends of these rods appear to be identical. This one's badly bent. Doesn't matter because obviously that's going to be replaced. These might actually be original. They're pretty small. Whereas at the pitman end of the tractor, this one here that actually still feels okay, but we're going to replace it anyways because the boot's completely trashed and it looks like dirt's already managed to get in there. This has even got a Zerk fitting on it. It's kind of an oversized one. I'm thinking maybe this is a replacement. This one right here, I don't know. It looks similar to the ones at the other end in design. Well, maybe not. It's got a cap, almost like a sheet metal cap on it that looks different. But this taper is larger, so I'm going to look up and see how much it is if I just ordered these as IH parts, but I got a feeling that I'm going to find them to be very expensive and that I'm pretty sure I could probably find a aftermarket generic or an automotive ball joint that has the same size on specifications for size that'll work on this thing and save me some bucks. As far as these rods go, yeah, they're bent up and they're ugly looking because of this angle iron being on here, but the reality is they'll still work perfectly fine. Even this one here that's got a kind of a significant like distortion in it, the reality is it's probably still going to be strong enough, and I can make up for the issue with the length of this one because of the bends by adjusting these. So, I mean, that's the whole purpose of these. By the way, each end should have a different thread. In other words, one of these should have a right-hand thread and the other end should be a left-hand thread. And the reason for that is so that when you loosen up these jam nuts right here on each end, you're supposed to be able to rotate this middle bar, and because one of them's a reverse thread, it doesn't matter going in the same direction, they're both going to pull in or out depending on which way you turn it. So that's the theory of operation behind these things, because otherwise you would have to undo this from the tie rod every time that you wanted to adjust it. You'd have to undo this so that you could turn this around and then reinsert it and recheck. That would be just nuts. So that's the design behind them. This I don't know about. This is the only one of these that has like a U-bolt clamp on here. I could see that this would actually work to keep this tight because it's got a slit right here, which you can actually see on this one much better. We've got a slit right here, but you can see that with the slit there, you have the ability to pinch down on this to to tighten this. But the jam nut should be what's doing that as far as keeping it from loosening. Oh, I have a sneaking suspicion these are going to be crazy tight, but I'm going to see if I can get these off without any heat. I don't know which one of these are the reverse threads, so this one looks like it's regular right-hand thread. So if you're wondering how I came to that conclusion, I'm looking at the tilt of the threads, looking which direction is uphill. Because as many of you may have heard, a screw is really a inclined plane that's turned into a coil, into a circle. Just keeps going around and around in a circle. Seems like no matter which way I try and grab this thing, something's not. I think I'm going to have to put this on the ground and wrestle it. Alright, that moved a little bit, but then it stopped, so maybe I'm wrong about that. Try and go the other way. Yeah, I was wrong. Turning this to the direction that normally would be tightened is causing this nut to loosen, so this is the left-hand thread. In other words, right now, you see I'm turning this in, and it's coming out. The exact opposite of the lefty-loosey, righty-tighty rule. So then this one, because it's the opposite end of that same rod, this one should be lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. And it was. All right. This one's not going to unscrew as easy as that last one did. Alrighty. I really feel like firing up my acetylene. So I think what I'm going to do is let's see if I can take this one off, because I really only need one from each end for starters to figure out sizing. And chances are the threads on all of these, other than right hand, left hand, are going to be the same diameter. So actually I could probably no, I need to take one of these off because the tapers are different. That's right. Actually, I should have just grabbed a big giant pipe wrench and was able to get this off. Damaged the threads pretty bad, but who cares? This is junk anyways. I got plenty of good threads over here to take a measurement on so I could find out the pitch and size of that. And again, so this is the normal thread. I guess I might as well take them all off while I'm out here with these big wrenches. Alright, be it ever so horrid, there they are. Time to do a little digging. Alright, so these are the two left-hand thread ones that are on the front ends of the tie rods. And first thing I did was I Googled IH350 tie rod end. And after you get past the useless ads, one of the first things that comes up is antiquetractorparts.steinertractor.com. And if we follow that link, they end up showing that they have what they're describing as a front tie rod end for 350 utility. And then it says what numbers it replaces. So if we check out that this is the size, we will then have the part number. I could go to the Case website and just look up the exact part number. All right, so they're calling this the front tie rod end, which is what these are. Then it gives us dimensions. And it says 0.687 inches -18 left-hand thread. So what they're saying there is they're saying that the thread pitch of this is a left-hand thread, 18 threads per inch. Which in order to get that, it's pretty simple. If you have thread pitch gauges like I do, you can just find one that matches up. But with large threads like this, it's just as easy to just take a scale and hold it, and you can actually just measure a 1/2 inch and then count how many threads you have there. And in my case, there's 9. 9 times 2 is 18, so that's 18 threads per inch. And I already know it's left hand, so far that's a match. The next thing that they give us is they tell us, oh, and by the way, 0.6875 is 11 sixteenths. Yeah, so it's 11 sixteenths of an inch, 18 TPI. Next thing they give us is they say that it's 4 inches from 4 inches to center of post. Well, what they're talking about is they're talking about the distance from the center of this post here to the end of this rod here is 4 inches. And that checks out also. Perfect. The last thing they give us is they give us the taper. And they say the taper plus or minus 5 thousandths. So they're saying the taper is plus or minus 5 thousandths, 0.614 to 0.575. So they're not giving you a taper per inch. So it turns out, if I take that smaller dimension, 0.575, and I check right at the top here, the small dimension of this taper, it ends up being almost exactly the 0.575. And then guess what? If I come all the way down to the largest part of the taper before it straightens back out again, I end up getting almost exactly the 0.614. It's actually 0.6617 or something like that. Close enough. Remember, it's plus or minus 5 thousandths anyways. So I now have just confirmed that this one that they're selling at Steiner for $17.95 a piece is in fact the one I need for my tractor's front tie rod ends. The beauty is, now if we scroll down, they give you the replacement numbers. They give you the international numbers. Then they also give you a John Deere part number, 2 John Deere part numbers, and they give you a Ford tractor part number, which is great, because now we might be able to play around with those numbers and see if we can find these even cheaper. Here's a good example of why you want to shop around to see if you can find these cheaper. Here's somebody who's nice enough to offer these International Harvester tie rod ends right here. That's the same part number I just found for $75 each, but the shipping's free. Isn't that nice? And even if these were genuine International Harvester, you might be able to say, well, that's why they're more expensive. No. Look, aftermarket. Give me a break. The rear ones have this slight bend to them, and some people are really having a hard time finding these online and paying a lot of money for these. But I was able to find them as this Ford number, NAA 33271A. And this is the same dimension, 11 sixteenths, 18. The difference is that this is not left-hand thread. This is regular right-hand thread. Also, the dimension from the end to the center here is 4 1/4 inches instead of 4 inches. And then no one gives this taper. So I'm just going to have to assume that it's going to be the correct taper. So I'm taking a chance there. So I ended up finding them online from a place called, bear with me one second here, a place I've never ordered from before. It actually initially came up through Newegg, because Newegg is kind of like Walmart, where their website is open and just goes and finds all kinds of stuff. So I got my order confirmation from Reliable Aftermarket Parts, Inc. And what they're saying is that their part number for this is an FRT 40-0011 rear drag link. And they gave me a discount code I could use for 10% off. So it ended up being only, with tax, only $31.39, and they gave me free shipping. So that's why I went with the rears from them. However, when I put in these part numbers for the fronts, the ones that were coming up as the front ones, the cheapest ones they had were showing at $75 a piece. So I obviously don't want to go with them for the front ones. Front ones are actually the easier ones to find. Steiner's got them for only like about $16 a piece. I think they're like 18 bucks on Amazon, so I'm not too worried. I'm sure I'm going to find those today cheap enough. Well, a new seal came in for this side, a day ahead of schedule actually, so that was nice. So this is a national seal. This particular part number on this seal is 323138. This is actually tapered, so it doesn't really drag on, the seal doesn't really drag on that, which is good. Sometimes when you have a spline shaft out in front of where you're going to put the seal into, sometimes it's a good idea to wrap a piece of foil or thin shim stock, if you have it, around these edges here to help the seal, guide the seal in. I am going to just put a little smidge of oil there. And just run it around the inside of the lip. This is a double lip seal. I don't have a socket large enough in diameter that's also deep enough to clear this, so I'm just gonna try and get this to go in as straight as possible, and then I've got this little hammer with plastic ends on it. Tap that in real gently. That's better. Now I could put gear oil in that gearbox. So I guess back in the day this called for straight 90 weight gear oil, and I figured since this is an antique tractor, why not use some antique gear oil? I bet you this can empty is worth more than this oil. I need a little funnel. I bet you this stuff is like molasses. Oh yeah. Well, this might take a while. Alright, so I poured in that full quart, and looks like it's covering the worm gear there on the camshaft some. And I don't have another antique quart of oil. Oh, by the way, I just checked. These cans right here, they sell for like around 20 bucks on eBay. So I was right. The can is worth more than the oil. So I got this stuff here. It's almost impossible to find straight 90 weight now. This is high performance Valvoline 85 W140. The IT condensed manual that I have for this tractor shows all of the capacities for transmission, differentials, independent PTO, crankcase, cooling system. The one thing that they don't include is they don't include how much goes in this gearbox. I found a discussion on a tractor board, and it said 1 3/4 quarts was what the guy saw in his manual. I guess the instructions in the manual for topping off this box is you're supposed to put the fluid in until you reach the bottom level of this plug. The good news is no leaks out of the bottom. The common issue on these when they get older is on the bottom of the steering box, right where this camshaft, which is the worm gear part of this steering column, rides into that area there. There's actually a steel plug, soft metal plug that's pushed in from the bottom. It's just like a freeze plug. It's just like a freeze plug on an engine block, and it's pushed in from the bottom there, and they can rot out. And of course, because it's a very low spot, it creates a major leak. Not quite half of this quart yet, so it's interesting when I turn the steering wheel to the right, it's actually pushing the oil back up there. I don't know, that seems like it's full right there. That was only about 1¼ quart. No, I take that. Well, yeah. And well, there it is. Can see it's all leaking out, and I could see it seeping from that plug. So either that plug has a hole in it that I didn't see, or it's not fully seated. I don't know. But I know that to repair that, to replace that plug, which is the correct repair, you need to take the steering box off the tractor. And as we already discussed, this thing's welded on there. So, not going to happen. So I'm just going to let this oil leak out, and at some point I guess I'll probably just pump it full of grease. Although, when it leaks oil and you pump it full of grease to take care of that problem, that's more about these seals. I don't know if pumping it full of grease is really going to do any good for this particular issue here. And that really steams my bean. So there's the plug in question. I don't have my glasses on, and the viewfinder is kind of hard to see out here in the daylight, but I really can't tell if there's a hole in that or if it's just popping out, or what the deal is. Yep, leaking pretty bad. And then when you turn the steering wheel, it actually gets worse.